tourism is one of the sunshine industries in this country. We have the best spots, the best people if properly trained, and the best infrastructure which is now coming. Capacities of our hotels are increasing. We felt that because of the troubles in Thailand last year. A lot of tourists wanted to come. We couldn't accommodate them because we lacked the rooms. Now there's some trouble in Indonesia. Guess what? Tourists want to come here, but can we accommodate them with something else? Now, given that, can you imagine that when a sunshine industry such as tourism really blooms, and we are able to provide or to secure Sulu, and then we create Sulu as a facsimile of Boracay, what will happen? You'll have a mini Boracay competing against a big Boracay. But what if we devise a tourism strategy for Sulu, taking into account its ethnic and cultural strengths? Ecotourism with a cultural backbone. Making each area of the Philippines distinct because of its distinct culture. Not for us, but for those who want to come here and visit. But we talk about giving more to education, giving more to defense. But if we do not expand our revenue base with allowable, legally allowable commercial activities, industrial activities, agricultural activities, we are not expanding the revenue base. We'll just be getting from the right pocket to put in the left. What we should do now is to open up our economy. Open up to competition, align with the rest of the world. Because the Filipino can compete. Now, we go to the question of land. Should they allow foreign ownership of land? I think in residential, industrial, commercial, certain tourist destinations, no problem. It's just like in Waikiki Beach in Hawaii. How many hotels do you think are owned by Americans? Probably only about 10%. The rest are owned by Japanese. Yet, you can't export the land. They bring in jobs, they bring in revenue, they bring in tourists, they bring in commercial activity. I think we should experiment with that while keeping agricultural land, mineral land, forest land, timberland, and our marine resources solely for Filipinos. Can enter into joint ventures, fine, but the control should be for the Filipinos. Not merely because for us, Filipinos now, but these are for the future generations and not for ours to own, but to steward. We are merely stewards and not owners. We talked about certain substantive changes that we want to see. How do we do this? I propose that we have a constitutional convention right after the elections. They say, oh, just right after the election, we have an election again. I mean, so what? Even though it costs about 5 billion pesos, 10 billion, 20 billion, you're making a capital investment and not an operating expense. You're making an investment that will firm up the foundations of your country, your principles, your moorings, rather than painting the house. I would not mind an investment, even a political investment, for a reform movement, a structural reform. Another one is the climate change agenda. I see the effects of climate change every day when I have to respond to floods, landslides, changes in weather patterns. We have to do two things. Number one, reduce our emissions of dirty gases, of which we are not the major problem. Secondly, it's disaster risk management, institutionalization in the local governments, which has to have a lot of financial backing. Relocation of people living near perilous areas, which we know where they are already because of geohazard mapping. New designs for buildings under the Build Better, Be Better program, and a lot of other things. A lot of things are being done with the climate change agenda, particularly the green agenda of the government, particularly the disallowance of open dump sites, getting MRS, materials recycling facilities, in a lot of of places as possible and having sanitary landfills or eco parks as substitutes. Fourthly, education. It's not in order. Education. We have to have basic education reform. We have to align our basic education with the international agenda. A lot more technical knowledge is required of our students. Now, can the current 6-year, 4-year length of time in basic education admit of the increased requirements of an internationally aligned agenda? No. Obviously, we need a longer time for elementary and high school, because it's not only education but quality of life issues that should face children now. Time with the family, extracurricular activities, sports, leisure. Those are all important to the proper development of a child. Fortunately, there's a Philippine roadmap for education, which was done by Father Nebres, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just have to implement it, which is easier said than done, because it will need the reintroduction of a new curriculum, new school years, length of time rather, retraining of our teachers, giving them more emoluments to stay. Not easy, but has to be done.